Everybody, we'll get started here in just a second. Giving folks a few minutes to arrive. So make sure you have everything you need, settle in, get some water, get a snack. You might want to have a pen and paper. All right, so welcome here now. Just welcoming yourself into the space. What I'm welcoming you into is this teaching on healing harmful relationship habits. And I am Dr. Pavini Moray. I'm the founder of Wilcelium. And today we're discussing habits that harm your relationship and what to do about them. And this is one of my favorite things to talk about because it helps us bring into conscious awareness a lot that you're not often thinking about. So it's a pleasure to be with you today. We're going to be moving quickly through a lot of content, and we're going to be talking about tons of bad habits. So when I was preparing for this teaching, I made a long list of all the bad relationship habits that I could think of. Don't worry, we're not going to go over all of them. I've narrowed it down to 5 of the ones that I feel like are the most impactful, the most crucial to repair in your relationship. So we're together for about an hour. And at the end of our time together, I will be talking with you a little bit about our upcoming course called the Well Couple course and giving you some next steps if you're interested in that. And then we'll have some time for some live Q&A so that you get the full benefit of my attention. Wilcelium, my company, is a trans-led company that's providing the skills for thriving relationships. We're teaching adults who are longing for love how to have that, how to have healthy connection and create love that lasts. And the first Thursday of every month, we do these free teachings on a relevant topic about sex, intimacy, and relationships. And I hope that you will join us as part of your path to having the sex and love life that you want. And I'm going to invite you to turn off your other devices. So put your phone away, close your other browser windows, turn off your Slack notifications, whatever is going to be dinging and pinging you, just inviting you into presence. Inviting you into, you signed up for this, you've showed up for it, so give yourself the gift of it, right? This hour of just being present with your learning. You're learning to be a sovereign, erotic, and relational being. I'm also going to be asking for your participation throughout our webinar. There are times that I'll ask you to drop a comment into the chat. There'll be times where I'll be asking you to do things. You'll get more out of this time if you actually do the things that I'm inviting you to. You can modify them if you need to, it's fine. But it's participatory. It helps us feel more like a community. It helps me feel like a better teacher because otherwise I just feel like I'm sitting in a room by myself talking. So it's really helpful to get your participation. And I'm going to ask you to stay to the end of our time together so that you have a chance to ask me your questions and get real-time feedback. So we're going to actually start with a question. So open your chat box. And what I'd like you to put into the chat is any, or just one, a relationship habit that you're aware of that causes negative impact. And it can be one that you have witnessed in another relationship, or it could be one that you are currently practicing or have practiced. So just go ahead and put that into the chat box. What's one negative relationship habit? Shaming, criticizing, being dismissive, invasion of my partner's privacy, always saying what's on your mind. Yep. Anything else coming up for you? It's funny how we know what our bad habits are, right? We know. So I am a somatic sex and relationship therapist. I've been doing this for a long time. I've probably worked with 200 couples. And so what I'm sharing comes directly from my observation of the struggles that they're bringing, and noticing really what are the practices that make relationships unhappy, as well as from my own lived experience of intentional partnership. I'm in an intentional partnership, and so like we have bad habits, right? Um, so this is all from context of people, of actual people like you. So without further ado, the first thing I want to talk about is presence and the lack thereof, lack of being present in your relationship. And here's the thing about lack of presence, right? It's because we're distracted. And distracted is very socially acceptable, socially condoned. It's almost a requirement for being a participant in our society, right? Multitasking, being productive, pulling out your phone whenever you're alone at a table for a moment or waiting for something, hopping between screens, doing 3 things at once, like all of the ways that we distract ourselves. And this level of busyness, right, is our key defense against presence. And it doesn't, you're like, why would I defend against being present? Well, when you're present, you have to feel things, right? And especially you have to feel the vulnerability of love, of relationship, of being human. And so being distracted is a super good protection against being present. Life sets us up to be distracted. And however, if you think back, there was probably a time in your relationship when you were deeply present, when you were deeply present to each other. In fact, it was really the only thing you could attend to, right? That swirl of love and lust and connection, and you're so present that everything else kind of falls away. Uh, you know, the sleepless nights, the flaking on friends, the nobody sees you for months, right? Just so that you can have a few more moments with your precious beloved of being present with each other, right? And so many people long to recapture this time. I see this in my practice all the time. People are like, oh, I just wanted to be like it was at the beginning of the relationship. And they're not actually talking about the intensity. Some of them are, but a lot of times what they're talking about is the level of presence, of really being present with one another, being in each other's physical presence, emotional presence, spiritual presence, right? All of it, of just being really attending and attended to. So we fall out of habit of this, right? We, in our relationships, we fall out of habit of being deeply present to each other. And it's really one of the most devastating, I would say, things that can happen in relationship is when we're not present to each other. I'm going to tell you a story about a couple I worked with. I'm calling them Jack and Jill. Those are not their names, obviously. But I worked with them years ago, and they came to me and they told me that they weren't feeling connected, they weren't feeling intimate, they weren't being intimate, right? And so Jill, what she was up to was continually presenting information to her partner, right? Sometimes she was asking him questions, sometimes she was sharing ideas, sometimes she was just really seeking attention. She was very attention seeking. And he, for his part, sometimes he would nod. Sometimes he'd make a sound in response to her. Sometimes he would do nothing, right? Inside his head, he told me that he 75% of the time was actually paying attention to her. But she didn't feel his attention, right? And so what had happened between them is that she felt lonely, right? And so then she would do things to provoke him, to get his attention. His negative attention was better than no attention. So this was definitely a bad relationship habit on both of their parts. And so we worked a lot on being present with each other, on her being present and being able to say, hey, I'd like to have some attention from you. When are you available to give that to me? And him saying, hey, I'm giving you my attention right now. Can you feel it? You know? And so this piece of how do we intentionally bring our attention to each other is the corrective, right? Um, it's my sense that when I'm not bringing my attention to my partner, I'm also usually not bringing my attention to myself. I'm pretty distracted. And so how do we want to work with that, right? We're going to do a little practice here in a minute to really get this concept across. But really first, before you can be truly present to someone else, right, you have to be present to yourself. You have to be paying attention to what you're feeling, to what you're needing, to what your body's needing, to what your body's saying. Um, you are attending to your own wellness, to your own mental wellness, your physical wellness, spiritual wellness, emotional wellness, right? You're with you, right? And you're breathing, right? Because then when your cup is full of you, then you can really bring your attention to someone else. So what does this even mean, being present? And I can tell you, and then we're going to do this practice that I'm talking about. So what being present means is that you're here right now in this moment. You are here. So just like take a breath here and just be like, oh yeah, here I am sitting in this webinar with Pavini. I'm in my room, or I'm in my office, or I'm in my car, I'm wherever you are. Here I am. Okay, this is happening right now. It means that that wandering monkey of your attention, it's like, but what about this? But what, maybe I should, right? You've corralled it. You're focused on a singular thing, the here and the now. And it means that you're fully engaged in whatever it is that you're doing. Not part of you is here and part of you is somewhere else. Part of you is thinking about your list. Okay, so what I'm going to invite you to do is you can turn off your video if you want, or maybe you don't have video on. I'm going to ask you to, if this is a possibility for you, to go ahead and stand up. I'm not going to stand up so that you can still see and hear me. And I'm just going to ask you to be in your space right now. You can move around your space a little bit and just be really distracted. Be paying attention to, maybe you're like, ooh, I know Pavini said to pay attention, but now I'm going to not pay attention. So just like let the distraction happen. Oh, what else do I have to do today? What else is going on in my life? Oh my gosh, the kids, the dinner, fuck, I forgot to pay that bill. Just really let it go there. And turn it up even a little notch more, a little bit more distracted. Just notice, like, how is it to just be this distracted? What do you not notice when you're this distracted? And then coming into presence, doing whatever it is that you need to do to get back to a singular presence, just here and now. Keep moving. It's really bringing your attention fully to where you are and what's happening right this moment. Okay. And now back to distraction. And now back to presence. Okay. And now coming back to a shared group space. And what I'd like to invite you to drop a comment here. What did you learn? What did you notice about distraction and presence? Just go ahead and drop your learnings into the chat. I felt calmer when I was present. Yes. It's not hard to stop paying attention and getting into my head. Oh yeah, right. It's super easy to go there. It's harder to go the other way. What else? I feel a little anxious when I'm getting into the present state. It's really hard staying in the present. Sadly, I'm more comfortable with distraction than with presence. Yes, good. Anything else? Distraction is a quick dispersal of energy, attention, whereas presence is deliberate and slower. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're aware of this, of how we're set up to be distracted, right? And how easy it is to dwell there for long periods of our days, of our lives, right? To just be all over the place, to be scattered, to not be in touch with, to not be breathing, all of these things. And so this is true in our partnerships too, right? And it has impact, right? It has impact when our partner isn't present to us. We're like, hey, where are you, right? Like, hello, this guy right here, pay attention. And it has impact when we're not attending to our partners, right? And when both people are distracted and just kind of on autopilot, like you can coast, you know, if you're in a relationship that's tolerable, you can coast for a long time on distraction, right? But there's something that's missing, right? And part of that is learning to tolerate those feelings of like, yeah, it does take some work to get back to presence. It can produce a little bit of anxiety, right? I would say that like the more we do that, the more you do that, the more comfortable it will feel, right? But because we're habituated into this like, ah, so like dialing it back in and being here is, you know, it's a practice, right? And it's one that you can set up with your partner. Like, oh, like, this is important to us. Mindful, intentional relationship where we're both present. It's important. So, okay, what are our practices around that? Because, you know, there's so many things you don't have control over, right? You do have control over your attention, or you can learn to have control over your attention and to direct it. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's the first habit is like, all right, how do we practice presence? How do I practice presence in my relationship, right? So the next bad relationship habit is something I like to call mush mush. And I'm going to give you some examples of mush mush and you'll know what I'm talking about. So instead of planning time to be together, like we did when we were dating, it's just like all time is shared time. Like, you know, or I forget that my partner exists separately than me, that has different needs, wants, desires, fantasies, goals, right? I'm like, you kind of dissolve into the we, right? So mush mush is when we lose our sovereignty. And we as humans have these two important needs, right? We have a need for independence, to be our own person with our own feelings and our own thoughts, and interdependence, right? So we want to be alone and we want to be with others. We want to maintain our individual selves, and we also want to be able to connect intimately. And we don't want to lose ourselves in order to be connected. We need a balance of these states of just me, here we are, we, right? And you, I, thou, we, like these moving between these awarenesses or these states of subjectivity, right? And we need to find people with who we can practice love for sure. And the mush mush, it often takes root early in relationship because it feels so good to be met. It feels so good to fall in love. Like all of those brain hormones are just like, whoosh, when you're like, I love you, it's forever. I got married when I was 25, which is, in my opinion, way too young to get married. But in our ceremony, we did this like super 90s thing of like each of us had a candle that was burning, and then we like came together and we lit a third candle, which was the we, and we extinguished the individual candles. I like, now I'm like, oh my God, that was such bullshit. Like, what the heck was that? But that's the model of mush mush, right? Of I have lost my own self in order to be in this relationship. And it has all kinds of negative, this habit has all kinds of negative consequences, right? You get too emotionally involved with each other. One person's responsible for the other person's happiness. You have to have consensus on every area of your life. If one of you feels badly, both of you feel badly. And to some degree, this kind of empathy is necessary, right? Like we need to be impacted by our partner. But the question here is degree, right? To what degree am I feeling my feelings, and to what degree am I feeling your feelings, right? Is one of you the feeler in the relationship? How much choice is available around this practice, right? The more clinical term for mush mush is enmeshment or emotional fusion. And it's so in this particular relationship bad habit, people get really conflict avoidant, right? And if you're not fighting, you're not fucking, is basically my stance on this. Like, conflict is necessary. We can do conflict in generative, healthy ways, or we can do it in angry, harmful ways, right? But some degree of conflict is really necessary to help us maintain our autonomy. And so when this mush mush fusion and enmeshment thing happens, both partners are, or one in particular, is very fearful of introducing anything that would indicate difference, right? We are the same. We are that one flame. And this is a bad habit that we can fall into fairly easily. And so the opposite of this is differentiating, right? Of being my own person, knowing what's important to me, what matters to me, and you being your own person and knowing what's important to you and what matters to you. And sharing, it's like a Venn diagram, like here's me, here's you, and like here's our overlap, right? This amount is our overlap, but like we each have our own bubbles of who we are, right? And so I think the practice here, I'm curious if anyone has any great suggestions on this, is how do I anchor in my own life? How do I anchor in what matters to me so that I can share in a healthy way with my partner? And if you are in a mush mush, it takes some doing to get disentangled, right? A great couples therapist is of huge benefit here, of like, how do we start to untangle, be our own people, and share that loving, respectful space. So mush mush is the second relationship habit that I would suggest you not engage in. So, all right, let's go on to the third one, which is about vulnerability. So, the feeling of vulnerability is one many people avoid, right? However, relationships are these intense crucibles for healing, for transformation, for bringing up the hard stuff so that we can see it in ourselves, right? Like relationships can be so personally healing and transformative through this, the vehicle of relationship. They require stamina, they require grit, they require willingness to look at your shit, to go to the challenging places, to do your work, to name and acknowledge what is, to let love in, to share it out. Like relationships are a very particular spiritual path, I think. And often that's a lot of work and takes a lot of energy and a lot of attention. And honey, I just want to, come home and watch the game and have some beers. I'm like, I don't want to, right? And so this work can be really overwhelming and it can feel like too much. And so couples can make these implicit and invisible decisions to stay out of vulnerable topics of conversation. The feelings of discomfort feel like too much to sit with. When we're talking about sex, when we're talking about money, those are the two big ones. Family can be another one. There's others, right? And so you just don't engage them. You just don't talk about those things. You just stay away from those feelings, right? I was married for 10 years in that first marriage. We never talked about sex once. Like not once, literally. Did we ever talk about sex? Like what? Right? That's not sustainable. And so the problem is that eventually you need to talk about sex, you need to talk about money, you need to talk about family, whatever it is. All these vulnerable topics, at some point you need to talk about them, and these conversations become inevitable, right? And the discomfort that you feel from not discussing them reaches this boiling point, and then there's conflict, right? So we're not just like talking about the thing, we're fighting about the thing because we've held back talking about it out of fear of those feelings for so long. And then that just becomes like a toxic cycle that's reinforced, right? Like, oh, like every time we talk about sex, we fight. So let's just try not to talk about it until we fight again, until we don't talk about it. It just becomes this toxic cycle of not talking about it. So anybody have any experience with that? Staying away from vulnerable topics, just put yes or no into the chat. Just curious if that's something that has come up for you in your relationships. Oh, yes. There's lots of capital letters. Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, right. Like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. I had a client once who came to me to work on sexual aversion, something I work with in my practice, and but was averse to even talking about the aversion, right? Of like, because it creates such a sense of like inside of like, oh, this feels scary, hard, naked, vulnerable, terrible, raw, all those things that we are trying not to feel because we're scared of them. We're scared of those sensations. And the thing is, like, you get to develop capacity to be with any sensation and any emotion that you have. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes exposure, right? And it takes positive experience over time, right? Vulnerability, that's the sensations and emotions of vulnerability are actually what's required to be intimate, to be really intimate. And it can become a real barrier to physical intimacy when we can't let our guard down. You think it's going to hurt if I let my guard down, and it might be true. It might hurt, right? And making that decision, whether conscious or unconscious, I'm not going to be vulnerable, where do you think your relationship is going to go if you're not vulnerable, right? It's going to stay on the superficial. It's going to have a lot of buried resentments because you don't bring up anything that's real. And it's not going to be that rich container for the transformation, right? So, and it also means that you like aren't getting the benefit that you could be getting out of your relationship. Let's, for example, say you use control as a strategy in your relationship. Raise your hand if that's you. That's me. I want to control everything, I don't really want to control everything, and I don't think you really want to control everything. What we want is to feel safe, right? We want to feel safe. And that's the strategy that we use, is control. And you know that this is a problem, right? In relationships, because people don't like to be controlled. And you try not to do it, but like, I mean, you should be with me in the car, and Ari, I'm just like really trying not to say anything, like trying not to say like, oh, what about that parking spot? Or what about, I think you should put your turn, I'm like, I'm really trying hard not to be controlling, but I'm still being controlling, it's still there. And I think then we have these strategies, right, to protect us from vulnerability, right? Being like, oh my gosh, it's really vulnerable to be in the car with somebody else who's driving. It's vulnerable. But I have judgment about my strategy being controlling. So that's a mess. So what would it be like if I could just turn to my partner and be like, oh, honey, I just noticed I'm feeling really controlling right now. And because my partner's awesome, he would probably say something like, yeah, totally. You're feeling controlling right now. What do you need, sweetheart? And then we can have a conversation about it. But it's only because I've been willing to be vulnerable. Hey, I'm having this feeling, right? When we share our feelings like that, and we don't have expectation for other people to manage them for us, we're letting people in. We're being vulnerable. Like, that's embarrassing. I don't want to tell Ari I'm feeling controlling about his driving. That sucks. But it opens the door. And so this capacity building that I'm talking about, like, I have done that. I continue to push those edges, and I would invite you to, of like, all right, these conversations, especially at first, they're just going to be hard, right? How can I bookend support around them so that, like, we're going to talk about, sweetheart, let's on Sunday at 10 a.m. talk about sex after we have breakfast and we're both really well rested, and we're just going to talk about it for half an hour, and we're just going to be really gentle with each other, that kind of way to build capacity for vulnerability for the sake of being able to be intimate. So if you are someone who avoids vulnerability, this is something to think about. How can I start to build more capacity for it? How can I start to just talk about my experience more softly? So let's see. All right, we're going to talk about feelings and some bad relationship habits about feelings. Has anybody had this experience of you're just going about your day, everything is fine, and suddenly your partner out of nowhere has a feeling, and it's about something that you did? Have you had that happen? And you're just like, shit, like, it's fine. Like, what's the big deal? Like, we were just having a nice time, and now you're having a feeling, and now I'm having a feeling about your feeling. Right? It would just be much better if you didn't feel like that. Has anybody had that happen? Yeah, folks are saying yes. This is totally, it's great. Yeah, so I don't know how it was in your family. In my family of origin, certain feelings were okay, and certain feelings weren't okay. And it wasn't okay for those feelings to be present, right? And the habit is having it not be okay for one of you to have a feeling. So we're going to walk it backwards a little bit into what is a feeling, right? A feeling is an emotion or a sensation, or both together, that happens inside someone's body that is often influenced by neurochemicals and muscular contractions. That's what a feeling is. Is it a fact? No. Just because somebody feels a thing doesn't make it true, right? It's just a feeling. And the cool thing about feelings is that without a story behind them, without a narrative attached to them, and if you're breathing and moving your body, they actually pass through pretty quickly, about 90 seconds, if you don't latch onto them and increase them, right? And so the habit is, the bad habit is not allowing your partner to feel what they feel, is listening through your positionality, where you're like, okay, yeah, sure, I hear you have a feeling, but like, that's a really dumbass feeling, right? Or only hearing what you want to hear, like, oh, I hear that, like, they've just been like, this relationship isn't working for me, and you're like, oh, I hear you're having some challenge in our relationship, right? You're hearing what you want to hear, or you're hearing some version of their truth, right? So it's okay, it's okay for everybody to feel whatever it is they feel, because that's already happening. That's what is, like, that is happening. You are having that feeling, your partner's having that feeling. It's just emotions, right? It's just a feeling. I'm sure you've had the experience of someone telling you that what you were feeling was wrong, like, it's not okay to feel that way right now. Or you probably also had the experience of someone saying, oh, I think you're really angry right now, right? Or I think you're really sad right now, or I think under that is grief that you're not expressing, or whatever it is. Like, we tell people that they're not feeling what they're feeling, and then we tell them what they are feeling that we think they're feeling, right? So never a good idea for any of that. It's, even if you in your head are thinking, oh my gosh, really, here we are with this feeling again. The reactivity that you have to the feeling creates tension with the relationship, right? And trying to fix feelings is kind of pointless, right? So basically, trying to fix your partner's feelings, it invalidates what they're feeling. It tells them that they're broken, and you're really just doing it because you don't want to deal with the impact of their feeling, right? And so the better habit here, I love this habit, is allowability. What's it like to allow your partner to feel whatever they're feeling? And so this is how this looks, and we're gonna try this on, and then I'm gonna ask for a volunteer. So it looks like, your partner, you're just having your nice day, you're at the park, whatever, and then suddenly they're like, I feel like you're not present with me. And you're like, what the fuck, dude? I'm like totally present with you, right? That's what happens in your head. And inside your head, you're like, wait a minute, no, I have a practice for this moment. Okay. My partner is having a feeling. It's okay that they're having a feeling, right? That's all happening internally, right? My partner is having a feeling. It's okay that they're having a feeling. And you don't say that to them, right? But on the outside, you just listen to them. You believe that they're having that feeling in the moment. You don't judge it. You don't tell them that it's wrong. You just allow them to have their feeling. Like, okay, you're having a feeling, I'm here. If you have a feeling in response to their feeling, which we almost always do, you acknowledge that to yourself, like, wow, that really grabbed me because I feel really present. That's not true for me. I'm noticing I feel defensive, right? So I'd like to demonstrate this practice. If there's a brave volunteer who would be willing to role play being in relationship with me for the sake of this exercise and having a feeling. And then I'm going to demonstrate first the way not to do it, and second, the way to do it. So is there somebody who's willing? Just raise your hand and then I can promote you. I'm going to pick on somebody also if somebody doesn't raise their hand, because it's going to be good for you to see this. So take a risk here. It's not going to be embarrassing. I promise. Just push the little raise hand button. Heather, thank you so much. All right. Okay. Oh, perfect. Thanks so much. Can everyone see? Heather? Yes. Yes. Cool. All right. And Heather, if when I'm talking, that would be great because there's an echo.
Do you want me to mute myself?
Yeah, just when I'm talking.
Okay.
Cool. That's perfect. Okay. So here's what's going to happen. Heather, thank you, first of all, for your bravery and your courage. And we're going to have some fun right now. Okay. Okay. So we're going to be partners and we're going to be out on this this walk in the park, and we're just having this nice day. And suddenly you're going to have a feeling. It can be any kind of feeling. It can be like, oh man, I thought we were going to get ice cream. I'm disappointed. Or like, wow, that way you keep bumping into me really is pissing me off. Or I feel really frustrated that you're not talking about the thing we said we were going to talk about. Or I feel sad that you seem like you're not really with me. Whatever the feeling is, just, you're going to just express that feeling to me. And you're just going to say, hey, Pavini, I'm feeling XYZ. Okay. And then how I'm going to respond is the opposite of allowing your feeling. So it might be a little intense because I'm going to do that on purpose to really show what not to do. And then we're going to do a do-over where I do it in a way that's much more relational. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. All right. So go ahead and unmute yourself and just tell me about the feeling that you're having.
So I felt like we just wanted to go on a walk today. I didn't really want to, I don't really want to hold your hand and have an intimate moment. I just want to walk through the park and get some fresh air and de-stress from work and everything that's going on in my day. And I don't understand why we have to hold hands and make this like a loving gesture when I really just needed to get out and breathe a little.
Wow. That's intense. I didn't realize it was such a big deal. Like, I just thought it's nice to hold your hand, but like, clearly my bad. Like, forget about it. Like, I don't need to hold your hand. It's fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Okay. And we're going to push pause right there. And Heather, I'm just going to ask you, what did you notice in your body when I responded like that?
Well, I felt that's a pretty accurate answer of what I normally get, but it makes me like crunch up and like feel really yucky. And I know that it kind of came out harsh. And again, that's what I always do. I kind of blame myself. So like, I know it came out harsh, but it just makes me feel like not validated and being able to put up boundaries.
Yeah. Can we do the same thing again? You say the same. Yeah. Okay. So whenever you're ready, just tell me you're feeling, and I'm going to respond differently. And just for everybody else, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, my partner's having a feeling. It's okay for them to have that feeling. And then I'm going to continue to with my partner to say something else. Cool.
So could we just go walking through the park today? Because I really don't feel like holding hands and getting all lovey, and I just really need to de-stress from work and take in the park and breathe it in, and without having to have a loving moment with you, walking, holding hands, and being all romantic. Just really need to breathe.
Yeah, totally. Of course. Then it sounds like you want to just have some time in the park together, and you don't need it to be all lovey-dovey. And like, that sounds good to me. I'm down for that. Thanks for telling me. Okay. And Heather, what did you notice?
I actually, when you were saying that, I actually took a deep breath, because it was like I was able to have space without like it being filled with chatter and touching and things that I just didn't want at that moment. So when you were talking about it, like right at the beginning, when you said, yeah, of course, I was like, I actually gave myself permission to breathe, which was lovely. It was nice to have, I don't know, it's just, I know it's a simple thing. It just feels nice to be heard and not be criticized for wanting to have some boundaries in situations.
Yeah, thank you. On my end, as the partner in that role, what I noticed was like, oh, like I noticed something in my body, like, oh, and then it was easy to just be like, oh, totally, to just let it go. Like it wasn't about me. I was really clear, like, oh, Heather just doesn't want to hold hands right now. It's not a big deal. But there was that like startle, like, oh, I got caught doing something wrong, or like I misread the situation, or I made a mistake. There was that. But then it was just like, oh, like this is just my partner wanting some body autonomy. It's totally cool, And so to really put that into practice of just allowing for feeling. Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to offer you the feedback is that hearing when you made the feeling statement, it didn't land as harsh for me. You said initially like, oh, I know that was really harsh. And just on the receiving end of it, it wasn't super harsh. It was thoughtful, and you gave context. So thank you. Thanks so much. For anything else here that you need or that you want to say?
I just think I just am so appreciative of this. And it's like I can almost check every single category that you're talking about. So it's just really helpful to have you put it in perspective and to role play with us. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being
Yeah,
on.
thanks for being on.
Okay. All right, so the last habit that I want to talk with you about is not scheduling time for intimacy. It's not organic. Life is too full. I hear that a lot, right? So if intimacy is important to you in your partnership, and in my take on it, it's pretty important to have all kinds of intimacy, right? Not just sex, but emotional intimacy, cuddling, sharing vulnerably, like all of those kinds of intimacy are really important, right? And so if it's a priority, you got to put it on the calendar. Like once we get beyond that honeymoon period, like our lives are so busy, right? So we've got to calendar. But here's what I hear. That's so structured. I just want it to happen. We didn't have to put it on the calendar before. Why should we have to put it on the calendar now? But we put it on the calendar before and then we didn't do it. We don't have any time to put it on the calendar. I love that one especially. It makes it less magical. Like these are all the reasons people resist against calendaring it. And these are all things that were said by couples who came to my office because they weren't having the intimacy that they wanted. right? And so for me, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's like, well, if you want something, you got to make time for it, right? You want to have a strong body, you make time to go to the gym or whatever it is that you do. If you want to have mental wellness, you make time for self-care. If you want to have intimacy, you make time for it, right? It's just you know, math. It's true that intimacy really requires spaciousness and vulnerability, right? So if you're like, okay, we're going to put intimacy on the calendar for 15 minutes on Wednesday nights from 10:45 to 11, like, I'm not sure you're prioritizing it, because it takes time and attention, right? It takes consistent practice to feel safe enough to open our hearts and to open our bodies to each other. And ironically, as we go further down the path in relationship, it becomes more vulnerable rather than less vulnerable to do that, to really open to your partner because they know you so well, right? And so unless you are someone who is just on the regular involved in practicing like heart opening practices or erotic opening practices, it's rare that that intimacy impulse is going to strike both of you at the same time, right? And so my strong recommendation here is of a healthy habit is to schedule it. And because having it scheduled means that you get to mentally prepare for it. You can look forward to it. You can do embodiment practices so that when you get to it, you're actually in your body. You can think about what you might like to ask for. You can think about your own sexuality and connect with it ahead of time, right? So on and on and on. There's all these really positive benefits. And so the corrective plan is to set a time, put it on the calendar, and stick to it, come hell or high water. It matters that much, right? And if for some reason you miss your intimacy time, it's not okay to let it slide by without talking about it. You have to acknowledge that oh man, we had it on the calendar, we didn't do it. Great, when are we going to reschedule that time for, right? Don't let it slip by because you're reinforcing a bad habit of we're not doing it and we're not talking about not doing it, right? So scheduling intimacy, last bad habit, and easy correct if you're willing, right? So those are the 5, and there's many more, but those are the 5 big ones that I really see on the regular and would invite you into some thought around so that you can have a thriving partnership if that's what you want. Which is leading me to the next thing I want to tell you about. This year in January of 2022, I will be teaching the Well Couple course, which is all about all of this stuff, very pragmatic approach, practical, practice-based approach to creating a life of love and thriving relationship, healthy relating, good habits. It's for couples of all orientations, styles, backgrounds, ages, who have been together beyond the honeymoon stage. So it's for people who have really weathered a hard season with each other, who still love each other, but are sick of fighting. Folks who have tried other stuff like books and therapy and date night, and like they're still like, oh, something's still not quite where we want it to be. People who are longing for a really connected, intimate, like maybe you've gotten to that moment in your life where you're like, oh, I don't want to have to make that trade-off anymore of my sexuality or my partnership. Like we got to find a way to do this together. And people who are willing to make that happen, to work hard and to invest in it. And so the course is really designed to help you with conflict skills, help you bring your full self, help you with boundaries, help you learn to team with your partner, help you learn to heal and repair, even really old stuff. Just get you kind of like a reset of like, okay, here's where we are now in this relationship. What do we want from here going forward? It's work that is going to really inform all your relationships for the rest of your life and really help make this one that you're in much better. So, and there's just such a great community of people who are also in that vulnerability with you of like, hey, we are showing up because this isn't exactly what we want. And so we're ready to, to go all in and to see if we can make this work. So that's coming up in January. We have a process of like who this is best for. So I'm going to put this link into the chat. So basically you fill out an application form and answer some questions, and we from that determine if we think we can help you, because we're not trying to just like sell you a thing. We're trying to like really help transform people's relationships. And so if we think we can, we send you an invite to set up a time to talk with me, and you and your partner, and then we talk, and if it's a good fit, then we get you registered for the class. So that's how that goes. And we've just really had some amazing transformative successes with folks who have gone. We had 2 couples in last year's class who were like really at the brink of divorce. You know, they were like, this is our last ditch effort. And I got an email from one of them a couple weeks ago saying like, wow, like things are really different in our relationship. And I'm really happy. So like that. All right. So friends, let's take your questions. You can ask anything, and just really will give you my best and most honest answer. So go ahead and put those into the chat after you have copied on your mouse the that link I just posted. And yeah, what are your questions? I'm hoping that you're madly typing an intense question. I'm up for it today. All right, folks. Well, I must have done a really good job of answering all your relationship questions, which is delightful. So I think we'll just we'll wrap up. And you know, really, I want the world to be a place of relational goodness where people know how to work with power, how to work with consent, and how to be good to themselves and to each other. And so that's what I'm up to here. That's what Will Cilium's up to. And really hoping that this has been helpful for you, and that you'll take something away into your day and into your week. Feel free to, you know, to share anything that you've learned with your partner, your community. That you'll get the replay of the webinar probably tomorrow, and then if you want your, you know, if you want to have your people watch it, that's awesome. My request, so we're a super small company. You're like, what you talk about, how you talk about us really matters to us. And so, you know, that's my request, is like, talk about us, tell your friends that we're here and that we're doing good work. And if there's other ways that I can be of support to you, you know, feel free to reach out, because I'm here for you. And yeah, I think that's it for today. Just grateful for your attention and your presence, and sending you much breath, much grounded, good love, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye everybody.